Hello everybody, we're back here at Griffin Insiders to bring you all a debate on the 2016 election. My name is Sam Brower and I will be the moderator for this debate. I am joined by Alexis Book, a senior communications major and a registered Democrat, and Victoria Fish, a freshman political science major and a registered Republican. Each debater has 2 minutes to speak on each question asked. We will be focusing on who each debater feels won the debate on Sunday night and the issues surrounding this election. Okay, let's get started. The first question is for you, Victoria. Who do you think won the second debate?
To say that anybody won that debate is just a total lie. In all honesty, I've never felt more uncomfortable watching anything from the election being broadcasted to me in my living room. In my mind, both of the candidates lacked the air of presidentiality. They both lacked just respect for the position, in my opinion. Instead of trying to stand there and just bash your candidate and really just mudsling and throw out everything like that, you should be using that time to voice your beliefs, to voice your plans for policy to the American people. Because in all honesty, the presidential debates have the most views when it comes to anything on TV, especially on a debate, especially on a debate night. When it comes down to it, you should be using that time to advance your platform and not just make your opponent look bad. So in all honesty, watching that debate made me lose a lot of respect for both of the candidates. So in my mind, nobody won that.
Probably for the first time tonight, I'm going to agree with you, Victoria, because it's almost like a lose-lose for Hillary, Trump, and the American population as a whole. I don't think either of them were decent the entire time. The fact that we can get so many GIFs and, sound bites out of these debates, being called like burns of the century, like that's a joke. That's something you get out of sitcoms, not something, like this feels like an episode of South Park. It doesn't feel like an actual presidential debate. Last time I was talking about Hillary and I was saying she was so much more poised than him, and I feel like I'm watching her break under the pressure and resort to the same tactics I thought he used, and now I'm feeling kind of backed up against the wall because I'm watching them and I'm like, they're both just insulting each other the whole time. This is disrespectful. They're not answering the questions that are given to them. I'm not learning anything about anyone's policy. It's almost pointless to even watch it anymore. It's kind of become a joke, and it's kind of, it's an absolute shame on all of politics at this point.
Okay, the next question is going to be for you, Alexis. How do you think the release of the Trump tapes from 2005 impacts the election?
So I think after everything I've seen online and after hearing it from myself, that this is going to impact the election in major terms. Of course, as someone who never supported Trump from the get-go, this just enforced the fact that I thought that he is sexist and impolite and selfish, and this is something I expected from him, but I think for a lot of Trump supporters, as seen by the fact that the GOP, a lot of prominent figures backed away from him, that this really hurts his campaign. This is turning him making insults about women into him almost advocating for sexual assault. And I think at one point, you can take out the minorities of your constituency, but once you start messing with women, how are you going to win just on white men alone? I think I saw a chart on social media that had the two maps of if only women voted and if only men voted, and if only women voted, 90% of the states were blue, and if only men were voted, the majority were red. And I think it kind of goes to show that Trump's really personally attacking women in this campaign, and this tape just was not helpful to his case at all. On the same thing, though, I think Clinton's kind of jumping on that, and she needs to be defending herself a little bit more at that point, too, instead of just focusing on the mistakes that he's making. But I think this tape was kind of a game changer, and I'm really curious to see if there's anything else that's going to be leaked or where these sexual assault allegations are going to go.
Well, in my opinion, it's so straightforward. There is nothing good about that tape. It doesn't look good, it doesn't sound good, nothing good can come from it. But what I don't understand is why he's being attacked for his words over 10 years ago. Well, I do understand what he said was a shame. I am not afraid to keep supporting Trump by words he said 10 years ago. What he said, while it was very rude, it was very disrespectful, and it was just outright disgusting, it's a matter of what he said. Does it affect trade? Does it affect jobs? Does it affect anything that has to do with the governance of this country? No. And it's just a matter of, I am not afraid, as I said earlier, of Trump's words. as I am afraid of Hillary Clinton's untrustful actions and her words as well. And when it comes down to it, with the GOP pulling their support for Trump, that is nothing but a complete shame. When it comes down to it, your job is to represent those in your constituency. And by pulling your support for Trump, who the people clearly wanted to be their candidate for the Republican Party, you're not doing anything. And as soon as you start playing into this huge political game of how can I keep my majority and everything like that, and just really looking out for yourself, you are doing nothing. You know, if you really want to save your majority, then you need to be taking every effort and everything like that to help Trump. And what, like I said earlier, are Trump's words, his actions, completely radical, completely insane at times, and completely disgusting at times. When it comes down to it, everyone in the Republican Party right now should be working to help him and to help advance him. And as you stated, Hillary is completely all over the leaked tapes, but she should be working to defend herself.
And, you know, going off of that, first off, I can only say Trump was still, 59 years old? I might be getting that wrong, but he was an old man when he said those. It's not like he was a young boy. Not that it's acceptable for someone in their 20s to say it, but, you know, typical frat talk, I guess, even as disgusting as it is. I don't think it's locker room talk by any means, but maybe it'd be more dismissible if he was young. But as a 59-year-old who's been married twice, at what point are you going to stop disrespecting women and stop coming across as a sexist? And everything he said throughout this campaign, it's not like it hasn't echoed the same, you know, vibe that he released when that came out. I do think, I mean, this is the polarization of this campaign, is I feel like the Republicans are either Trump supporters or not Trump supporters, and there's no in between with that. And the Democrats, it's Hillary supporters or the old Bernie supporters, and there's no in between. And it's almost a shame because I'm so nervous to see what Congress is going to be like if either of the candidates win, because Trump's such a partisan candidate at this point, whether the GOP backs him or not. I just don't think he's going to get anything done with the Congress because not everyone hates him, but the Democrats certainly don't like him by any means, and part of his own party doesn't like him. So what policies are actually going to get passed once he's in the White House? God forbid he gets there.
But also going off of that, I do believe that in this country we have taken this shift and we've started this I am holier than thou persona and stuff like that. Whereas as I said, what Trump did say was blatantly disrespectful towards everyone, and it will affect his ability to do anything successful when it comes to policy and working with the other bodies of government. But there comes a time when we have to drop that act and really see if, to say that anyone can be really shocked and just completely outright disgraced by what Trump said, everyone was expecting something like this to come out. And to say that what he did and what he said is going to affect how he can further relate with other bodies of government, it's completely outrageous. You know, when it comes down to it, we need to drop this holier than thou persona and work for the advancement of our government and completely just not forget about what people have said in the past, but accept the fact that what was said was in the past. And we need to work forward instead of reflecting on what has happened and what has been said.
I do feel like I can obtain a holier thou persona when it comes down to sexual assault. I think that when you're talking about something of such serious subject matter, that's especially affecting, 1 out of every 4 women. This isn't typical talk that you hear from the average person, and for people to say that they're above that, I don't think that's any shock or surprise at all. I'd like to say I am holier than someone who openly advocates for something like that, and that might not appeal to his policies, and I understand why people still support his policies. That's a complete political stance. But at the end of the day, if you want a businessman who's not involved with politics, who has, conservative ideas on defense and trade to be your presidential nominee, that's fine. Find one that doesn't openly insult everyone who's been through sexual assault and imply that he'd be willing to or has previously sexually assaulted women. We can do better than that as a country.
All right, ladies, we have to move on to the next issue. All right. It was released by WikiLeaks that Hillary Clinton believes that you should have both a public and private position on certain issues. What does this say about her as a candidate? This is for you, Lexi.
Okay. Well, I don't think that this is any surprise. I think as a former Bernie supporter, I've always been worried about the way that Hillary talks to big money and the way that Hillary talks to her majority middle-class constituents. I do agree, to an extent, based off of what you said in the debate, that in a sense, yes, you have to work with Congress and keep some things private in order to move forward pressing legislation. But But I think given the people that she was talking to in those speeches, obviously this makes her look bad. And I do think that she has a closer relationship with Wall Street and with big money than, you know, other Democratic candidates might. And I'm not in favor of that. But I think that the actual kind of soundbite of it all was taken out of some context. Do I think that she really does kind of have this public holy persona where she's all for the women and the children and for against income inequality, and then she talks to big money and wants to compromise with them a little more than she makes it seem in public? I mean, yeah, I do think that, and I don't think that's correct by any means. But I think the statement she made in general, her speech team, I don't know who they are, but they do what they do very wonderfully. Everything she says has kind of multiple interpretations, and it's never very blatant or specific. So I think that it was kind of chosen carefully, and it can be interpreted different ways as to how specific she meant public and private policy. But I don't think it makes her look good by any means, and I do think that she kind of is two-faced in the election. I still think she's a better candidate than Trump, but I don't think that she's the ideal nominee either, based off of what she said.
Well, I think that when it does come down to it, especially in the world of politics, every word you say, you have to be more than careful because, as you said, any single phrase, any single word can be thrown extremely out of context. And so I think that when it does come down to it, this will hurt the Clinton campaign more than a lot of people believe, especially when you have a presidential candidate. Now, I'm not saying Trump is the most trustworthy candidate out there, but when it comes down to it, the people that we choose to represent our parties in political elections, when you question somebody's trustworthiness, and when it comes to show that Clinton has differentiating opinions when it comes to her public and her private, matters, it really just leaves a distaste for her as a candidate. As me personally, I want somebody to represent me that is going to voice the same opinion, whether they are talking to the bigwigs on Wall Street or they're talking to small minority groups. And like you said, when it comes to, private matters, I do believe in keeping things private, at least in the beginning stages of policy and everything like that, because you can't advance anything when you have a million different voices on a minor matter. But when it does come down to it, when you have a candidate who clearly has different opinions, whether she is in public or whether she is in private, it really hurts her as a candidate. And it really makes you not want to trust her because you don't know which of her beliefs is going to be the belief that she represents when she is on the floor of Congress or when she is on the floor of the Senate.
And I think both candidates in general do a poor job actually keeping the same opinion on how they're going to treat the middle class. I think Donald Trump has been inconsistent throughout his political career as a whole and not just this election. And apparently Hillary Clinton is more inconsistent than we perceive her to be because she's got two different personas. I think it's kind of a disservice to us as, the 99% because nobody really knows if they're fighting for us or if they're fighting for more money in their pockets. I'm hoping that we have a strong Democratic Congress. I think that's where I'm at this point.
Well, and not only is it just between the two candidates, but it comes to government as a whole. Because as Clinton has been asked about her different opinions in private and in public, that isn't just a representation of Clinton or of Trump. That is what the American people are thinking of the government as a whole. And that is not just a reflection of the presidential election, but of government as a whole. Can we really trust the people who represent us in Congress or our senators? It really goes to show the distrust that we as Americans are beginning to have in our government.
And I think that's why Donald Trump is a nominee as it is Republicans have looked at their Congress who've been in power before and aren't getting anything done or they don't feel like they're doing enough. And so now they're picking the outsider. They want someone who has the same voice as them. And as a very liberal Democrat, that's fearful for me because I'm thinking these are the type of people that are rising to power because we have this distrust of government. So it's a shame that Hillary's kind of advancing on this notion that we can't believe anything they're saying because this is just going to ignite more people like Trump to run for office, and that's the last thing that I'd want.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when it comes to the fact that, you have Trump and you look at his background, that just goes to show how fed up, Americans are with politicians. They don't want somebody who is going to be completely two-faced with them. They want somebody who's going to be real, and that is a big part of why I think Trump has made it this far. He is not afraid to say what a big majority of Americans are thinking. And that is what the big appeal is with Trump. You know, we want our voices to be heard, and Trump is actually saying what we're thinking. Mm-hmm. So when it comes down to it, I think Americans are just starting to get very fed up with the game of politics.
No, I agree.
All right, moving on to our last question. In a post-debate poll, the Wall Street Journal had Secretary Clinton up 9 points nationally. With under 1 month until the election, who do you think will win the election? This is for you, Victoria.
With under 1 month, it's shocking to say that this election is not yet closed. You know, while Clinton does have this large lead over Trump, anything can happen in a month and a half. You know, any startling piece of evidence can be dropped. But I do think that in order for Trump to regain his loss and everything like that, he is going to have to really step up his performance in this next debate. One of the things that we touched on earlier was the fact that we didn't like the absolute mudslinging that comes from debates. But when it comes down to it, I feel that if Trump can be professional and can act with more dignity than he's shown in these last 2 debates, and actually speak about his policies like he does on his website. You know, over the weekend I was very confused as to, it's under 1 month until the election. Am I confident that, you know, which candidate can I really vote for? And when I actually went onto Donald Trump's website and I looked at his policies and his plans, I was completely blown away. You know, what he's proposing isn't totally far-fetched, but it's not being broadcasted over national television. It's not reaching the majority of American people. So I feel that if Donald Trump really wants to win this election, he is going to have to step up, be a lot more professional in this next debate, and actually talk about his policy and not worry as much over how can I trash Hillary or how can I try to knock her down a little bit. He's going to have to start acting more presidential.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, as much as I would love to say, oh, yeah, Hillary Clinton's in the lead, I feel like this is going to follow up for the next month. I feel like every other week there is a new giant scandal. And from what's been implied from both of the candidates, there are more tapes to be leaked, and I'm sure there's more WikiLeaks documents that they're going to release closer to the actual day of the election. So I won't be surprised if the American people go back and forth a handful of times more. And even so, when big events happen in the country, like when there's giant shootings, I feel like pretty consistently Trump's ratings go up because, you know, he's more of the advocate for defense. So I think that a month to go, as crazy as it seems short in, you know, the long scheme of things, but a month is a lot of time for things to happen, and I'm fairly nervous about all of it because, as you said, I'm not really confident as to which candidate has a sure shot of winning, and I feel like a lot of people are dropping and just voting third party, and once we actually see that in the election, that can skew numbers big time on a large scale, especially for those important swing states. So, the polls, I just think they just don't adequately show the picture at this point.
And especially because you have so many Americans and so many, I hate to say, but people within our generation who have just taken to the stance of, you know what, I'm just not going to vote. And that is definitely going to be a large influence in this election because our generation does have the numbers to completely sway this election. But if people decide not to vote, then, you know, that's definitely going to alter who wins. And that is a big factor. Our generation and our voter turnout is also going to play a huge part in who wins.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Griffin Insiders. Do you want your political position heard? Contact us today.